Welcome to our drop-in group. We are really excited to do a drop-in about going back to school, especially during the time of COVID. So I know there's been particular challenges with COVID and a lot of anxiety around the Delta variant. So I want to just kind of do my regular spiel that I've done before, which is really taking time to be mindful and to notice as parents where our anxiety is, and to really be observant of how you're feeling and your fears and thoughts about your kids going back to school and so forth. Where is that in you? Because our kids, and as all parents know, are pretty psychic. So they're going to be picking up a lot of our anxieties with the return to school. So before we get started into all of the content, I'd like to just take a moment to kind of introduce Las Cumbres to you. Our organization has started services in Los Alamos actually 50 years ago, which is really remarkable. 50 years. I remember actually applying for a job with Las Cumbres when I got out of college way back, and we were doing, Las Cumbres had adult services at that time. So now we're providing a wide range of services for families in Santa Fe, Rio Arriba, Taos, and Los Alamos, and Bernalillo County, actually. And we offer quite a range of services. We also have a preschool in Espanola, and we have developmental services, home visiting. We have services for mothers who are pregnant and need support. That program is called K-Cute. And yeah, I guess I mentioned everybody. Home visiting.
Grandparents.
So, grandparents, yes. That's been a really fabulous program. Really helpful because we are finding a lot of grandparents are raising their grandkids these days. So my name is Susanna Garrett. I'm a clinical social worker. I am the supervisor for the behavioral health team in Espanola and Santa Fe and Los Alamos. I've been with Las Cumbres a little over 6 years. I started my career in mental health back in 1994. I worked in residential treatment for quite a while. And then I went in to do some admissions work, and finally started doing therapy when I started at Las Cumbres. So anyway, and I'm kind of dyed-in-the-wool New Mexican. I've been here all my life. My family, actually not all my life. We moved here when I was 6 years old from Venezuela. And but we've been here in New Mexico. I went to school in Albuquerque and finished my college in Albuquerque as well at UNM. So I'd like to introduce Naja Druva. Do you want to say a few words?
Yeah, I'm a child and family therapist. I work with Susanna in Las Cumbres in the clinical department. So I particularly typically work with kind of the court cases, children in foster care, and the infant mental health. So those are little guys below the age of 3, like who maybe have to be in foster care. And I am pretty local. We moved here when I was about 7. Moved away, came back, but I grew up in the Santa Fe area. And have worked with kids for most of my career. I did like 1-year stint in recovery, just long enough to learn that that's not my that's not my strength. So came back and have been really working. I'm really happy to be working with loss congress. But I think what brings me to this panel is I'm a mom of a 1st grader. So, as we're talking about back to school and challenges, back to school for the kids, for the parents, for the families, I'm in it for sure. So,
And what has that been like for you, Naja?
Like most things, right? There's good things and there's hard things. So coming off a year where, I was really trying to like work from home, help him do school from home, was super stressful. There are some like really relaxing and positive things about like dropping him off for most of the day, and then I can get a lot of work done. But just again, like everything, right? There's more than one side. It's been hard too. It's been challenging.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, we have this, the aura. I mean, we've been through a whole year and a half now of pandemic. And I think it's kind of the new normal in a way. We're trying to, a lot of people have adjusted to it, but this fall, kids have actually been asked to come back into the classroom. And, parents have opted in and opted out, had many different views on it, and so forth. One of the things I find that's really a plus about transitions is it's also an opportunity to make a lot of changes and to kind of restructure family routines, to talk about, family values together, and to figure out ways that can really help with the changes. Like, for example, morning routines are really a challenge. So figuring out and planning ahead with your child can be really, really helpful. Things like, what would you like in your lunchbox? What kinds of things do you like? Including your child in that process. Like, okay, let's make a list of the things that you really like to take for lunch. Okay, that's if you're not buying lunch there. And really shop for those things, be attentive, and also, get your child involved in making those things easier for you. So, that can be really helpful. I was working with a family the other day, and we were talking about, oh my gosh, well, what you bring to lunch can become a battle, because I don't know about you, Nasha, but when my daughter would come home and there'd still be, tons of, like, she didn't eat her sandwich, or, she didn't touch the milk, or, all this kind of stuff. It would be like a bone of, God, I made this beautiful lunch for you, and you only had a few bites, So really helping kids make those decisions, it gives them a sense of autonomy, it improves their self-esteem. They begin to think ahead about things, even the little ones, you know, they can think ahead. Wow, I really like those grapes that you put in there, and I like the yogurt, you know. And so giving them the chance to be involved in all of that is really, it really builds their competency, and they end up feeling actually really good about it.
Mhm.
So you want these kinds of routines that really are reinforcing for the child. They feel better. They feel more competent. You know, there's intrinsic value in what you're asking them to do. So I'm really an advocate of, you know, sorting out what's going to work best. So in the morning routine for this child, when I was meeting with this family, the child said, you know, I think I can put my sandwich together. Okay. And he's 6. He's James's age. So
Mhm.
it was really a wonderful thing for him to build that into his morning routine, or the night before. That's the other thing, you know. So he started getting up in the morning in a more regulated way, you know, because you also have the issue of, oh my gosh, I don't want to get out of my bed, right?
Mhm.
I just can't get out of my bed. This child I was working with, he just would have these meltdowns of like just crying uncontrollably. I don't want to get up, and started hating his mother every time she tried to wake him up. So what they did was they built in these chimes that would begin waking him up 20 minutes before he had to get out of bed. And then it would ring and remind him. And then eventually he would get up. Okay. And they had built in this routine of his clothes were selected the night before. So he could just get up and get dressed. So all of these little things that may come easy for us as parents, breaking them down and really giving kids the opportunity to make decisions about it. I think that's really important. And then to keep track, you know, how did it go to this morning? You know, on your drive in or later in the evening when you guys are sitting at the table to have a meal, which is another thing I really think is valuable, is to have family meals. So you can just sort of check in on the day. You know, so really
Yeah.
asking them, how did you feel about how we got to school this morning? How did it go? Tell me, you know, what was that like for you?
Yeah, well, at our house we had, I feel like, both of those things. So he did school for a week, and then he came home asking for a lunchbox because we wasn't that into the school lunch, and we had the ability to do that. Right. So I was like, okay. And I remember asking, like, what do you want? My kid is super into noodles. So he wants noodles and carrots and applesauce, like a packet of applesauce, right?
Mhm.
And we're on week 2. This is Friday, where he wants noodles and carrots and applesauce. And I'm always like, maybe a sandwich. Do you want me to throw, nope, noodles, carrots, applesauce. And I was talking to my husband about it because we make it. It's actually really easy, right? So on Monday, I make a giant pot of noodles, and then I just, he eats them cold. And so I could just in the morning throw them into this box he has. But I was telling my husband, like, can you imagine eating the same thing for lunch every week, every day for 2 weeks? And my husband, happens to be a teacher as well, he was like, well, maybe it's comforting for him.
Mhm.
Like, there's so much unknown. It's so weird. We can't even walk him to the classroom in the morning, right?
Mhm.
But he knows when he opens that lunchbox, he knows exactly what's going to be in there. Like, okay. So as long as he's cool with it, we're doing it. And then we started having an issue in the morning where And my kid is just super verbal. He's got a child therapist and a teacher for parents. So he's like,
Mm.
says all the things. And so he's just, mornings were just tough and tough and tough. And I'm tired. I don't feel like it. He learned pretty quickly that when he says he doesn't feel good, you can't send him to school. So we started getting like, oh, I don't feel good. Like, dude, like, we can't joke right now. This is not the era to be joking about not feeling good, right? And so we finally got out of him, I'm just still tired. I'm just still tired. And it was like, okay, now we move bedtime up an hour.
Yeah.
But we were able to have a conversation with him, like, if this is how tired you are in the morning, you need more sleep and we have to go, right? Like, school starts at the time it starts. So we pushed our bedtime up an hour and it's worked. And he got it. He understood. Right. And so it's like, I feel like it's, I was thinking about having this conversation, we joke that we're having it like a month into school, but I think it's helpful because it's like things that I thought we would be doing a month ago that we've had to shift and we've had to change.
Wow. So it's
Right.
constantly changing and
And
reshaping itself. Yeah.
and being flexible, right?
Mhm.
You get new information. Oh, great. All the kids get cafeteria lunch. That makes my life easier, right? Until he comes back, he says, can you make my lunch? Right.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll shift.
Well, I love the noodle thing. It's it's something that we talk about a lot in infant mental health is routines equal safety. So even those little foods, that's a big deal. That's a big deal.
Right.
It really can help him anchor in a way, that keeps him going.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're hearing a lot of stories about, and I have, just again, married to a teacher, I have a tremendous amount of respect and appreciation for what school staff are doing on a daily basis. It's mind-boggling. As a parent, I wouldn't realize it. Right. And so, there's a lot of shifting going on. So one of the things, my son had a friend that he made at school, which was great. Then every day he was talking about this kid, Sebastian this, and we played with Sebastian, and then Sebastian moved classrooms. And it was like, yeah. And so like, that was a big shift for my kiddo, and again, like, as a parent, I can't do anything. I'm not going to call the teacher, like, Sebastian needs to come back. You don't understand.
Right.
We need Sebastian back. Right. So, but there are all these shifts and these changes. And I also try to remember as a parent how powerless kids are. Right. They often don't get to choose which school they go to. Depending on their age, they don't get to choose what they wear, what they eat. At any given time, the doctor they see, if they don't like their doctor, sorry about it. Right. And it's for a good reason, right? We don't want to give kids too much. They need a parent, they need caregivers for reasons, right? But what it feels like when you're literally not in control of almost every aspect of your day.
Yeah.
So really, wanting to say like, okay, noodles, that's something I can get on board with as mom. Right. I cannot let him pick his clothes in the morning because he'd be like Batman every morning or something crazy. Right. Like shorts and a tank top and it's fall, like, no, dude. Right.
Yeah.
But noodles I can do. So what are the areas that I can help him feel consistency and control? Right. Because there are areas where you can't choose not to go to school today. You can't choose not to eat breakfast, right? But okay, you could choose what you have for lunch that we can work with.
Yeah. So some of the things that they really do have, they can make a choice. Yeah, that's really true. There is a lot of unknown, that they're constantly with. And also they're learning so many skills about, waiting for things. Waiting is a big deal. It's like, wait, go get your lunch. You have to wait in line. You have to
Mhm.
get in line before you go into your classroom. Wait, wait, wait.
Right.
Now, when I've been working in the preschool, the little kids, the 4-year-olds. Now, my favorite line is, wait, said the elephant. It's like everything is wait, you know. So there's a lot that's going on in their world. And I think our job is to help them kind of anticipate their day a little bit, by sort of organizing things ahead of time. Oh, well, this afternoon we're going to come home and we're going to do this and such, or on the weekend we're going to do this, or today you have these things that you go to, being able to give them the forecast of how the day is going to roll out. I think that's really important. So, it's overall just a time to kind of really be mindful of the household rhythms, like, and look at ways that will make things easier, and also create more self-esteem for the child. And so, one of the things that I've been working with families on is just having a family meeting, like once a week, where you kind of go over certain things. And this is more so for older kids, like what the expectations are for the child. You do have to finish your homework, right? And you establish a time to complete the homework, a time to complete your reading. Naja and I were talking about that before we came on, is that, for James, he has to read, 20 minutes a day, 15 minutes? Yeah, that's usually the standard. But that's a very sacred time when you sit down and read with your child. You're really there and you're really present. So, building in like 15 to 20 minutes of very special time with your child, where you can do something that he chooses to do or she chooses to do, can really go a long ways, and I know that it's like parents are, I think people are very, the pace is so fast now. And it's like, we're always trying to cram one more thing in. Okay. We got to get them in soccer. We got to get them in dance. We got to do this. We got to do that. And, I've had families that are just like, every moment of the weekend is already accounted for, and I'm kind of an advocate of slowing things down and making things more spacious for kids, instead of like over structuring their life, so that you do have time to check in, and you do have those 15 minutes to just follow your child's lead and find out, hey, what's going on with your child today? They'll show you. So the idea of the family meeting is for everybody to get together and just chat about how the week went, talk about things that could be fun to do on the weekend if we get all our chores done, talking about the expectations about chores, getting your homework done, even simple routines like, well, it would be nice if you could just kind of make your bed when you get out of bed and pick up your clothes. I mean, all of these things you have to kind of gauge by the age, right? But, picking up as you go along, and building in these kind of small little chores that can be rewarded, that can be rewarded, like, wow. And it's not just, oh, you're going to get more time on your iPad, these concrete rewards. It's an intrinsic reward too. They know they can do it. And that means a lot, you know? So,
I know I often underestimate what my son can do.
mm-hmm.
Right? Oh, let me do that for you, or I better, right? And and less now that he's a little older, but even like as a toddler, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
let me help you climb up to the slide, or let me help you. I'm trying to think of one that's not too gross, right? Like the like when he could wipe himself, right? Like that was
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, oh, he could do that. Like,
Yeah.
that's one last thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm done with pottying, all done. He could just go and deal with it and come back. That's like brilliant, right? So really,
It's a milestone. Mm-hmm.
yeah, really kind of like overshooting it instead of undershooting it, right? So
Good
like,
point. Mm-hmm.
and trying it, like, can you take your plate and put it in the sink and rinse it off? And he might
Mm-hmm.
not be able to do all that, but then, I know what he can do.
Mm-hmm.
And then my other thing is there's just some things that it's easier and faster if I do it.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it's again, we're like striking this balance, right? Where I want him to take increased responsibility. I want him to help out, but like the getting dressed thing, right? Like if I send him into his room to get dressed on his own, he'll start playing with a toy and he'll have like one sock on, and I'm trying to get us out of the house. So if I know what kind of shirts he likes, I know what kind of pants, I'll lay them out. Mom made this decision, right? Boom. Now you put them on, right? But like also allowing myself to take charge to make it easier, right? Like I could decide that, right, it's easier and faster if I do this, and I need it to be easy and fast.
Yeah.
Because we got to get out. We got a day to do. There's 3 of us that are launching at about the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's really helpful. Yeah, that brings up a point, Naja, that I think a lot of parents underestimate what their child can do.
Mm-hmm.
And, in the preschool, we wait to see what they can do because, yeah, I mean, developmentally, they, a lot of times they are capable of doing things and we want them to do them. I was in a preschool yesterday, actually, and a little guy, he's like 2, but his mother, who's 9 months pregnant, carries him in. He doesn't really talk. She talks for him. So it's kind of like that balance is so important, right? To let him feel, what it's like. He seems, I mean, I never really thought, I hate that when people say the child is being babied, right away I flinch. It's like, okay, what's going on here? But I really got it a couple of days ago when I was watching this child, because there's a lot that he can do that people don't allow him to do. They do it for him, including talking. So it's something to be really vigilant about. And you can also teach your child a lot, and this would come outside of the daily routine because, I know people are hustling to get to work or picking up and there's a lot going on, but like in your conversations, in your one-on-one time, I was thinking about the getting dressed thing. And I'm wondering, would it be, I know I put them out for you, but what would make that easier for you? And ask them,
Right.
To be involved. So,
I remember last year in February when the kids went back, we thought we weren't going to send my son back.
hmm.
And then it was over the course of a long weekend in February where they said all the teachers have to go back. So that sent my husband back, which meant that I couldn't work. And so long story short, over the course of a weekend, all of a sudden we have to send my son to school. And then like the child therapist in me was just like losing my mind. Like we haven't had time to talk and he's going to be, and there wasn't enough transition time. Right. But it was the only option for us in the moment. And I was so worried about it. Didn't sleep at all that weekend, and we're just gonna like send him into this building. He knew the building, he knows right, but you can't even walk him in anymore. We've never seen the classroom, right? I'm gonna pull into the parking lot, and my 5-year-old at the time is just gonna get out of the car and go to school. And I was just like wrecked about what that would be. And I'll be darned if that Monday my son didn't hop out of that car like John Wayne and walk in the building. He was fine,
Wow.
and it was like, okay, he can do it, right?
I
Right.
remember you telling me about that.
I know, I was wrecked. I was so worried, and he did great. And he was really happy to be around other kids. He hadn't gotten to play with other kids for like a year, right? And so there was a lot of ways that it was so good for him. And I wouldn't have made the same decision if we had other options, right? But it's like, this just reminds me of that, where I go like, oh, he can, or this will be too hard, right? But in
Those are the
practice,
moments to stop and question yourself.
right,
Really, is this me, or is it
right,
really him?
right.
Yeah. So the other thing I wanted to talk about is, the idea of really getting in the habit of positive compliments to the child in very detailed ways. I think this is really important in transitions. I really like the way you got up this morning, and you got everything together, and, be very, very specific about it. I think that's helpful. And if you can deliver those compliments, really noticing the things that are working well and praising the child for that. And then the things that aren't working well, try not to lose it. Okay. This can become a problem, because when a child is melting down first thing in the morning, of course, the parent's hair is on end like this, just freaking out, because they've got to make it on time for the drop off. They've got to be in line, So it's like trying to use your skills. I always, what I do is immediately go into my breathing. Naja, I know you have other ways of dealing with things, but like just breathing in and breathing out and trying to stay as calm as you can, and then not get into a big fight about it. Just let it go. Okay. And because people, this is the real clincher of the whole thing. If you're dysregulated, if you're upset, problem solving comes much harder. It probably will not be solved. So resigning yourself to that fact, things will not be resolved right now, and let it go, I think, is the best strategy. And later say, wow, you were so upset this morning, when everybody's calm. You were so upset this morning. I wonder, can we talk about that? Do you remember what happened? What can we do next time? And try to problem solve with the child later. Yeah. So the thing about rewards, Naja and I were talking about rewards earlier before we got on the call. I think kids are so, they're kind of trained to get, material rewards. Okay. So try, you know, I think it's a good idea to sort of step away and try to find out what the intrinsic rewards could be for the child. You know, like just noticing the things that your child really loves to do and jotting them down, you know. Like James, he loves bugs. He loves to look at flowers. You know, these are when he was pretty young, but
Still the same. Yeah, it's about the
yeah,
same.
jumping rope. Let's see, dancing. My daughter was in dance for a long time, and it got to be a very driven thing, which we had to pull back on. But you know, finding out what it is they really love in particular, and just keep an ongoing list. And those can be rewards. Hey, you know, let's go get a cupcake later on. You know, you did so well today. You know, I just want to, for us to have a special time together, you know, and really figuring out those rewards, and to be organized about it. It's good to have an ongoing list, right? And that's the thing about, you know, the Strengthening Families program. There's so many lists that you can keep track of. Were you able to do your chore today? You know, what did you do, you know, today? Did you get your clothes picked up? Whatever the chores are for that child, did you get your homework done? And to be able to track it and go, whoa, I did pretty well. Tracking really motivates people, you know, and so building some of those things in can be really helpful for kids as well.
And I love the language around that, right? Like, were you able to do your chores today? And chores are a tricky thing, and discipline is a tricky thing, right? And so it's like the chores need to get done, and I don't want to parent in a way that the chores are optional, right? Like, this is your responsibility. But I like saying it like that because, you know, from a stance that like there are no bad kids. Like, kids aren't lazy, or, you know, all these judgments we could have about not getting the chores done, right? But they get overstimulated, they get
distracted,
right? And so instead of you were bad and you didn't do your chore today, oh, you weren't able to do that, and there comes with consequences, right? When you're not able to do that, but it's not because of some inherent quality.
Right.
You didn't do it today. Right. Like,
yeah, so
like
there's not a judgment there.
Right. And if they didn't sleep well, maybe they had nightmares, maybe they, for whatever reason, the dogs were barking in the middle of the night, whatever, they didn't sleep well, they wake up in the morning, they're tired and they're cranky, and so he didn't put his own socks on. Right. Oh, well, you weren't able to get yourself dressed, so there isn't like the reward that comes with that, but acknowledging that, I don't know, the things that make there's just stuff that makes getting ordinary life stuff hard, you know, even for us, even as an adult. You know, I get behind or whatever, I'm dealing with stress, I don't feel good, maybe there's a global pandemic on, right?
Yeah.
Right. I wasn't able to do that today, so
yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, it's yeah, being able to give some slack. And, you know, I want to say a little something about the discipline piece. Really, discipline is about teaching. It's really about teaching. So making sure that your child is receptive to that, you know, and regulated and thoughtful is the best time to catch it, you know. And I want to say one more thing in terms of routines. It goes for parents too. Like, sleep is so important. I love what this story about James, you know, oh yeah, maybe you need to go to sleep an hour earlier. Parents, two people, you know, we're constantly stretching it, you know, oh, let me get, and I'm guilty to the max of doing that. I'm trying to get better, but keeping a regular sleep schedule is so important for your well-being, and your functioning. And if you can teach that early on, like James, oh my gosh, I feel so much better. I had an hour more of sleep. He knows the importance of that. He knows the value, of taking care of himself that way. And that's so important, especially, early, like he is. So, and then
I feel like that's you're bumping into another thing. I feel like we're off your list, your bullet points.
No, that's okay.
I'm also mindful of my modeling. So if I'm talking to him about how important it is to brush your teeth twice a day, get to bed and get a good night's sleep and eat healthy, words are real cheap to a child. They, and they are always watching. So if I am, he knows that I'm up till 11 eating snacks and not brushing my teeth and whatever, what is the more powerful lesson? I could tell him what he should be doing, but if I'm not doing them, and the reality is I'm telling him to do those things because they make him feel better. He has an easier day when he slept more, when he ate really good food the day before, and so really, there is a piece about like, am I practicing what I preach? Am I teaching by example?
Exactly.
And I tell, when in the work, I work a lot with caregivers, and caregivers who are caregiving under stress, in particularly stressful circumstances, right? And so, I'm really big on this idea of like self-care as a parent, and it's gotten diluted in social media. And I say self-care and people hear like I should take a bath or I should get my nails done. And not that that's not self-care, but if I'm having a conversation with an overwhelmed parent about the need for self-care, they are already maxed out. And so adding something to it isn't going to be the solution.
Exactly.
Right. So I might say self-care, and I talk to them the next, well, I signed up for a yoga class and I'm going to work out another day every week. And it's like, well, if you're already maxed out, adding things to that schedule, that's just going to make you more maxed out. A lot of times self-care is actually removing something. Where can I create that?
Plate. Yeah.
That's actually what self-care is, right? That's why it's a bubble bath, because it's a bubble bath instead of taking on extra online course to get ready for college, going back to whatever it could be, right? And so, into that point where, and I'm just thinking about, like, if we're talking about meal planning ahead, creating a schedule and some containment around that, as a parent, I don't have the ability to do that if I'm already, in fifth gear here.
Yeah.
So slowing down enough that I can do that, and looking at what is on my load that I can take off, because there are things you can't, right? So that I have the room to have the family meeting.
Yeah.
Right. That I have the room that I can sit down and take a breath and eat dinner. When there's a lot of research about how good it is for kids, right? When the family eats dinner, and I don't have judgment around that. So if you're not a family that sits down for family dinner, it's okay. Right. But if that's something you want to be doing, when I hear that somebody wants to be doing that and they're not, it's often about the time. It's often about like, oh, the kids they're watching TV and I could put their cheesy mac in front of them so that I can go do these other things I need to do. It's not about not wanting to, it's just this pattern of meeting the requirements beforehand, right? So like stepping back and like, how can I make it easier? How can I create more time?
Mhm. Make things more spacious.
Make things more spacious. And
Mhm.
then all of a sudden I can problem solve. I have the mental energy to problem solve about like what would make mornings easier. This morning routine sucks.
Yes, it's the
What,
thing I hear about the most.
right? So like
Mhm.
what would actually help? But when you don't have time to do that, right, then it's just every I was talking to Jeremy beforehand. So when you wake up to like an alarm clock, and your alarm clock might be a screaming child, sorry, I'm all congested. Right, it's like this gunshot of a race, like, and you're off until until nighttime, right? And then it's a pattern, and it's another one I hear. I don't go to bed till like 11, 12, 1 in the morning because that's the quietest time. I just like sit on my phone and scroll through Facebook or TikTok, because it's my only time that somebody's not screaming a demand in my ear. And I
Yeah.
get it. Also, you might feel better the next day how do we make the time for you to do that
Mhm.
so that you're not eating into your sleep time, so that you don't wake up tired and you're already behind,
Yeah.
when
Don't
you
have
get
much
started.
energy.
Yeah.
That's so true. The modeling piece is so important. When they see you keep a discipline about sleeping, about eating well, all of those things that you value in self-care, they're going to pick it up.
Totally.
So it starts with us, as usual.
And it's so hard as a parent. We will run ourselves ragged on behalf of our kids. But when I all of a sudden say, well, you need to take care of yourself on behalf of, like, oh, no, I don't have time for the bath. I don't have time for the mindfulness. And it's like,
Right. It's kind of a catch-22, especially when we're living in a culture that expects us to constantly be doing something. The workaholic
exactly.
American culture. Yes, we all have to make a living, and it is tough, and most of the time it takes two people to do it, but it's kind of crazy, actually. I just have to say that.
And I
And
think there's a lot coming out about how unhealthy it is.
oh yeah.
And people are starting to say, like, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. And I'm not even making a lot of money for the amount of work I'm doing. Not me. I love my job. But someone else,
A
but
lot of
like
people are
a
in that
lot of
predicament.
people.
Yeah.
And let's talk about like modeling. Thank you, Jeremy. When we're talking about modeling, the lessons I want my child to have as he grows up, I do want him to feel empowered to say no. So when he's like, can we go to the children's museum and the t-ball practice and soccer practice? And I'm going to be like, no, you could pick one of those because I can't drive all over on my Saturday. Right. And he might have a feeling about that, not getting to do that, right, at 6. And that's fine. And we can work with that. But I want to model for him that he can say no on his own behalf.
Oh, that's great. That's beautiful. Yeah. Well, it looks like we're at time.
I know.
Thanks everybody for joining and for being here. And we look forward to the next drop-in.
Yeah. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah.